You know the words. Every child does. 4 innocent lines that have echoed through centuries of nurseries. But beneath this childish veneer lies one of the most disturbing stories ever hidden in plain sight. The rhythm bounces along harmlessly until it delivers its devastating conclusion. This isn't originally about an egg breaking. It is a coded message about the helplessness of human effort, wrapped in a riddle that reveals the most fundamental horror of human existence. Some things, once broken, can never be restored. Those theories about civil war cannons or fallen kings are elaborate fabrications, constructed down the line to bury an even more disturbing reality. The darkest truth about Humpty Dumpty begins not with eggs or cannons, but with a bottle. In the late 1600s, Humpty Dumpty wasn't a character at all. It was a drink. Picture the grimy taverns of Restoration London, where the air hung thick with pipe smoke and the stench of unwashed bodies. Sailors hunched over splintered tables, their faces weathered by salt and sun. Serving girls navigated between grabbing hands, sloshing ale onto sawdust floors, already sticky with spilled beer and worse. Behind the bar, a proprietor would call out, "Humpty Dumpty," as he ladled a steaming mixture from an iron pot, boiled ale mixed with cheap brandy, hot enough to scald, strong enough to drop a man where he stood. The patrons would down it in desperate gulps, their throats burning, their eyes watering. Within minutes, they'd stumble toward the door, faces flushed crimson, bellies churning with the toxic brew. By the second or third round, they'd be humped over, ready to be dumped in the gutter. A particularly vicious concoction that could destroy a man from the inside out. The Oxford English Dictionary confirms this etymological origin, documenting how this potent brew gained its name from the way it left its victims, humped over and ready to be dumped. By 1785, the term had evolved into something even more sinister. It became slang for the kind of person who consumed these drinks. Short, squat, clumsy drunkards whose bodies had been ravaged by alcohol. The linguistic connection is undeniable. Hump for their hunched posture. Dump for their inevitable collapse. These weren't just social drinkers. These were the broken souls you'd find slumped against tavern walls in the seediest parts of London. Men whose lives had been so thoroughly destroyed by vice that even the combined efforts of their community couldn't lift them back to their feet. When the earliest version appeared in print in 1797, it didn't mention kings or horses at all. Instead, it spoke of 80 men and 80 more, that's 160 people, who could not make Humpty Dumpty where he was before. Imagine a crowd gathers around a collapsed figure, sprawled beneath a low stone wall where the drunks often perched to watch the world spin by. His clothes are soaked with ale and worse, his face purple-red from years of drink. One man grabs his shoulders, another his feet. More join in. 10, 20, 50. Soon the entire neighborhood has assembled, 160 strong, all pulling and lifting and straining, but his body remains limp as wet cloth, his breathing shallow and rattling, his eyes rolled back to show only whites. They can prop him up momentarily, but the second they let go, he collapses again like a sack of grain. The more they try, the clearer the terrible truth becomes. This isn't just a man who has fallen. This is a man beyond all human help, destroyed so completely by his vice that no amount of community effort can restore him. The wall wasn't a castle fortification. It was a tavern bench or a low stone barrier where drunkards would perch before their inevitable fall. Across Europe, different cultures developed their own variations of rhymes about irreversible falls, each capturing the same essential horror. In Denmark, children sing of Lille Trill, little roll, a chubby boy who tumbles down a hillside. But in the original Danish, the story is darker than it sounds. Lille Trill doesn't just fall, he revner, splits open like overripe fruit. The Danish children watching don't just fail to help him. They stand in a circle, singing, as if his destruction were entertainment. The rhyme ends with Lille Trill's insides spilling out som dej, like dough, while the other children count the pieces. travel to Germany, and you'll hear of Humpelken, whose very name mimics the sound of something round and heavy bouncing downstairs. In the Rhineland version, Humpelken sits not on a wall, but on a church steeple during a wedding. When the church bells ring, the vibration shakes him loose. He plummets through the wedding party below, splattering across the white dress of the bride. The congregation, described as all the bishop's men, kneel around the stain, praying, but their prayers can't undo what gravity has done. The wedding becomes a funeral. The white dress stays red. While these European cousins share the archetypal theme of irreversible destruction, the English Humpty Dumpty stands apart with its specific origins in alcoholic degradation, a uniquely British darkness born from the gin-soaked gutters and ale-stained tavern floors of a society grappling with the human wreckage of industrial-scale drinking. Other cultures imagined mythical falls. England encoded the all-too-real collapse of men destroyed by vice, but the rhyme's dark power transcended its original meaning. By the early 1800s, this tale of a drunkard's irreversible collapse had transformed into something else entirely, a children's riddle. The morbid specificity of alcoholic destruction proved so effective at describing something utterly broken that people began using it as a puzzle. What sits on a wall has a great fall and cannot be put back together again. The answer, divorced from its grim origins, became obvious: an egg. This transformation appears in collections like Gamma Gurton's Garland as early as 1810, where illustrations began depicting not a ruined man, but an anthropomorphic egg. The riddle format stripped away the social commentary, leaving only the pure mechanics of destruction. Children who recited it had no idea they were echoing a cautionary tale about the limits of human salvation. The egg became the perfect visual metaphor: fragile, precarious, and once broken, impossible to restore. The famous line about all the king's horses and all the king's men that everyone knows today, it didn't exist in any early version. This political element was artificially grafted onto the rhyme around 1813, over 15 years after the first documented printing. The proof comes from an unexpected source: British parliamentary records. Picture Westminster Hall on a grey March afternoon in 1813. The oak-panelled chamber echoes with heated debate about the catastrophic state of British colonial policy in India. The East India Company's mismanagement has created famine and revolt. Military expenses are hemorrhaging the Crown's treasury. Then, a member of Parliament rises, perhaps someone like Henry Brougham, known for his cutting wit, and his voice booms across the hushed assembly. Gentlemen, our situation in the subcontinent reminds me of a children's riddle. All the king's horses and all the king's men cannot put our Indian policy together again. A ripple of nervous laughter spreads through the chamber. Some members shift uncomfortably in their seats. The nursery rhyme, once about a neighbourhood drunk beyond salvation, now an innocent riddle about an egg, has just been weaponized into a devastating critique of royal incompetence. It wasn't someone hiding the original meaning. By replacing fourscore men with the king's men, the rhyme morphed from a tale about community helplessness into a subversive commentary on state failure. The message became radical. If the king's own resources, his military might, his loyal servants, couldn't fix this simple problem, what did that say about royal competence? The evidence becomes even more damning when you trace what happened next. In 1835, yet another version appeared, this time declaring not all the king's money nor all the king's men could solve the problem. The critique had expanded from military failure to economic impotence. Each revision didn't hide the past. It layered new meaning on top, creating a palimpsest where each generation's anxieties obscured those that came before. Once you understand this process of cultural layering, the popular historical theories about Humpty Dumpty's origin reveal themselves not as ancient truths, but as modern fabrications. These false narratives have been repeated so often that most people accept them as fact. Take the most famous claim: that Humpty Dumpty was a massive cannon used during the 1648 siege of Colchester in the English Civil War. According to the legend, this monstrous piece of artillery sat atop the walls of St. Mary's by the Wall Church, its bronze barrel gleaming in the summer sun. The royalist defenders had christened it Humpty Dumpty, perhaps for its short, squat shape, or the way it seemed to teeter precariously on its mount. For weeks, it thundered death upon the parliamentary forces below, its iron balls smashing through ranks of Roundhead soldiers. Then came the fateful day. A parliamentary cannoneer, perhaps trained in the new Model Army's artillery corps, aimed his own gun with deadly precision. The shot struck not the cannon itself, but the ancient wall beneath it. Stone exploded outward in a cloud of dust and debris. The great cannon tilted, teetered, then toppled with an earth-shaking crash into the rubble below. The bronze barrel cracked upon impact, the iron mounting twisted beyond recognition. Royalist soldiers scrambled down into the destruction, ropes and levers in hand, desperate to salvage their most powerful weapon. But the cannon lay shattered among tons of collapsed masonry, all the king's horses pulling, all the king's men lifting, couldn't raise Humpty Dumpty to his perch again. It's a compelling narrative that transforms a nursery rhyme into coded military history. There's just one problem. It's completely fabricated. Its defenders ignore the fatal, unresolvable flaw. The canon legend, like the Richard III myth, depends entirely on the all the king's horses and all the king's men line for its entire narrative. Yet the 1648 siege predates the very existence of that line by 165 years. The story collapses on a simple matter of dates, a chronological impossibility. Even if one ignores this, the Victoria County history of Essex, after exhaustive research through contemporary accounts, military records, and local archives, formally concluded there is no evidence to support the suggestion of any connection between the siege and the nursery rhyme. This canon story wasn't even invented until around 1980. For over 300 years, nobody connected this rhyme to Colchester. Then suddenly, in the late 20th century, someone created this elaborate historical backstory and managed to convince millions it was true. The pattern repeats with every supposed historical origin. The theory about Richard III, the hunchbacked king who died at Bosworth Field in 1485. It requires the king's men line that wouldn't be added to the rhyme for another 328 years. The Gloucester siege engine hypothesis, proposed by an Oxford professor in 1956. Pure academic speculation with zero contemporary evidence. Each new theory doesn't hide the original meaning. It buries it deeper under layers of more exciting interpretations. Each new layer obscured the last, not by conspiracy, but by cultural evolution. The egg imagery, though a later addition from the riddle tradition, is paradoxically honest. It reconnected the rhyme to an ancient truth. An egg's purpose is to break. It doesn't get reassembled. It either transforms or it rots. Its destruction is its meaning. You see this truth everywhere. A reputation shattered by scandal, a mind broken by trauma, a moment of trust lost to betrayal. No amount of power or resources can unmake that fracture. The rhyme endures because it speaks to this primal fear. We are all Humpty Dumpty, perched on a wall, and some falls are forever. This is the secret layered within the nursery. Authority is an illusion. Restoration is a lie. And the king's horses and men aren't coming to save us. They never could.